Listen carefully. The difference between winners and losers is not talent. It is not intelligence. It is not luck. The difference is simple. One person keeps showing up. The other stops. Success belongs to the person who continues when motivation disappears, when excitement fades, when nobody is watching, and when every excuse feels justified. The truth is brutal. Your future will not be determined by what you do once. It will be determined by what you do every single day. This audiobook is about building the discipline to show up when you don't feel like it, because that is where extraordinary lives are created. Chapter 1. Stop waiting to feel ready. Most people are waiting for confidence, waiting for certainty, waiting for permission, waiting for the perfect moment. And while they wait, life moves forward without them. Years pass, opportunities disappear, dreams become regrets. Potential turns into disappointment, not because they lacked talent, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they kept waiting to feel ready. This is one of the most dangerous habits a person can develop. The habit of postponing action until emotions feel comfortable. The habit of believing that confidence comes first. The habit of thinking that successful people somehow woke up one morning feeling completely prepared. That is not how success works. That is not how confidence works. And that is not how discipline works. The truth is much simpler. You do not become ready before action. You become ready through action. Remember that. Write it down if you have to. Repeat it until it becomes part of your thinking. You do not become ready before action. You become ready through action. Because readiness is not something you discover. Readiness is something you create. Think about a child learning to walk. The child does not wait until they have mastered balance. They do not spend 6 months studying walking techniques. They do not read books about movement. They stand up. They fall down. They try again. And through action, they develop the ability. That principle never changes. Adults simply forget it. Instead of taking action, they start collecting excuses. I need more information. I need more money. I need more experience. I need more confidence. Maybe, maybe not. But there is something you definitely need. Movement, because movement creates momentum, and momentum creates belief. That's the key. Most people think belief creates action. In reality, action often creates belief. The entrepreneur doesn't start with certainty. The entrepreneur starts with a decision. The athlete doesn't begin with confidence. The athlete begins with practice. The creator doesn't begin with mastery. The creator begins with imperfect work. That's how it always happens, not the other way around. Look at every successful person you've ever admired. You're seeing the finished product. You're not seeing the thousands of moments when they felt uncertain. You're not seeing the early failures. You're not seeing the mistakes. You're not seeing the doubts. But they existed, every single one of them. The difference is that successful people acted anyway. They moved before they felt ready. They started before they felt confident. They committed before they knew the outcome. And through repetition, confidence arrived. Not before, after. You have a choice. You can spend the next 5 years preparing, or you can spend the next 5 years progressing. Those are very different paths. One feels safe. The other creates results. One protects your comfort. The other transforms your life. You have a choice. Every day. The tragedy is that many people confuse preparation with progress. They read another book, watch another video, take another course, create another plan, revise another strategy, and somehow convince themselves they are moving forward. But nothing changes, because information without action is entertainment. Knowledge without execution is useless. Potential without movement is wasted. It's not about knowing more. It's about doing more. That's the key. The world does not reward intention. The world rewards execution. Nobody gets stronger by studying push-ups. Nobody gets wealthier by studying business. Nobody becomes confident by studying confidence. You become stronger by doing. You become wealthier by doing. You become confident by doing. Action is the teacher. Action is the mentor. Action is the pathway. Everything else is preparation for the thing that actually matters. Action. Think about athletes. Do you believe elite athletes feel motivated every day? Of course not. Do you believe they always feel ready? Absolutely not. There are mornings when they are tired, days when they are discouraged, moments when they doubt themselves, yet they train. Why? Because discipline does not ask for permission from feelings. Discipline acts first. Feelings catch up later. Most people reverse the process. They say, "When I feel motivated, I'll begin." The disciplined person says, "I'll begin, and motivation can join me later." That mindset changes everything, because motivation is unreliable. Readiness is unreliable. Emotions are unreliable. Action is reliable. You can act regardless of how you feel. You can move regardless of your mood. You can take one step regardless of your confidence level. That's power. Real power. Not controlling your circumstances. Controlling your response. You don't need their permission. You don't need approval. You don't need validation. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You only need one thing: the willingness to start before you feel ready. Many people waste years trying to eliminate fear, but fear is not the enemy. Inaction is the enemy. Fear simply means something matters. Fear simply means growth is nearby. Fear simply means you're entering unfamiliar territory. That's normal. That's human. The goal is not to eliminate fear. The goal is to move despite fear. Because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is action in the presence of fear. And every act of courage makes the next act easier. Every step builds confidence. Every repetition builds belief. Every action builds identity. Slowly, almost invisibly, you become the person you once wished you could be. Not through thinking, not through planning, not through wishing. Through action. Always through action. You do not become ready before action. You become ready through action. The person waiting for certainty remains stuck. The person willing to move gains experience. The person waiting for confidence remains frozen. The person willing to act develops confidence. The person waiting for permission remains dependent. The person willing to start becomes free. You have a choice. Today. Not next week. Not next month. Today. Take the first step. Send the email. Start the workout. Write the first page. Launch the project. Make the call. Take action. Even if it's imperfect. Especially if it's imperfect. Because perfection is another form of procrastination. And procrastination is simply fear wearing a disguise. Remember the lesson. The perfect moment does not exist. The perfect plan does not exist. The perfect feeling does not exist. What exists is this moment. What exists is this opportunity. What exists is your decision. And your future will be shaped by that decision. Not someday. Today. You do not become ready before action. You become ready through action. Master this principle, and you will stop waiting for life to begin. You will begin creating it. Because showing up every day starts with one simple act. Starting before you feel ready. And once you learn that lesson, a new challenge appears. Starting is important. But what happens when motivation disappears? What happens when the excitement fades? What happens when showing up becomes difficult? That's where true discipline begins, and that's exactly what we'll explore next. Chapter 2. Motivation will abandon you. There is a lie that keeps millions of people trapped. A lie that sounds reasonable. A lie that feels true. A lie that destroys dreams every single day. The lie is this: I'll do it when I feel motivated. Think about how many times you've said those words. I'll start exercising when I feel motivated. I'll work on my goals when I feel motivated. I'll change my life when I feel motivated. But motivation is a feeling, and feelings are temporary. They come, they go, they rise, they fall, they change with the weather, they change with your energy, they change with your mood. And if your success depends on something that changes every day, your success will never be stable. That's the key. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is dependable. Motivation is temporary. Discipline is permanent. Motivation is a visitor. Discipline is a resident. One shows up occasionally. The other stays. And if you want extraordinary results, you cannot build your life around something that appears only when conditions are perfect. Because conditions are rarely perfect. The truth is simple. If you rely on motivation, you will stop. If you rely on discipline, you will continue. Remember that. Repeat it. Let it become part of your thinking. If you rely on motivation, you will stop. If you rely on discipline, you will continue. Most people misunderstand successful people. They imagine successful people are more motivated. They imagine successful people wake up excited every morning. They imagine successful people love every step of the process. That is fantasy. The reality is very different. Successful people often feel exactly what everyone else feels. They get tired. They get discouraged. They get frustrated. They experience doubt. They experience boredom. They experience disappointment. The difference is not their emotions. The difference is their response. When the average person loses motivation, they stop. When the disciplined person loses motivation, they continue. That's the key. Success is not built on your best days. Success is built on your worst days. Anyone can work hard when they feel inspired. Anyone can show up when they feel excited. Anyone can stay committed when progress is obvious. But what about the days when none of those things exist? What about the mornings when you are tired? What about the weeks when results are invisible? What about the moments when quitting seems reasonable? That is where discipline becomes valuable. Because discipline was never designed for easy days. Discipline exists for difficult days. You have a choice. You can follow your feelings, or you can follow your commitments. One creates comfort. The other creates growth. One feels good today. The other creates a better tomorrow. You have a choice. Every single day. Think about an athlete preparing for competition. Do they only train when they feel inspired? Of course not. Imagine training only when motivation appears. Training would become random, inconsistent, unpredictable. The athlete understands something important. Results come from repetition, not emotion. The body does not care how motivated you felt. The body responds to consistent effort. Life works the same way. Your future responds to consistency, not enthusiasm, not excitement, not temporary bursts of energy. Consistency, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. That is how success is built. And consistency requires discipline, not motivation. It's not about excitement. It's about execution. It's not about inspiration. It's about repetition. It's not about feelings. It's about discipline. That is the lesson most people spend years learning, and some never learn it at all. They spend their lives chasing emotional highs, waiting for another surge of inspiration, waiting for another moment of excitement, waiting for another burst of confidence. And while they wait, disciplined people quietly move ahead. Not because they feel better, because they act better. There is an important behavioral shift you must make. Stop asking yourself, "Do I feel like doing this today?" Start asking, "Did I commit to doing this today?" That question changes everything, because the first question makes emotion the leader. The second question makes discipline the leader, and discipline is a far better leader. Feelings are inconsistent. Commitments are clear. Feelings fluctuate. Commitments endure. You don't need their permission. You don't need motivation's permission. You don't need excitement's permission. You don't need confidence's permission. You can act anyway. That is one of the most powerful realizations a person can have. You can move before your emotions agree. You can work before you feel ready. You can show up before you feel inspired. You can act first. And often, motivation follows action, not the other way around. Many people believe motivation creates action. In reality, action frequently creates motivation. You start moving. You gain momentum. You see progress. You feel encouraged. Motivation appears, but it appears because action came first, not because action waited. That's the key. Action generates energy. Action creates momentum. Action builds belief. Waiting creates nothing. Think about the last time you procrastinated. The longer you waited, the harder the task felt. The more you delayed, the heavier it became. But the moment you started, something changed. The resistance decreased. The fear weakened. Momentum appeared. That is not an accident. That is how human behavior works. Movement creates momentum. Stillness creates stagnation. So stop waiting for motivation. Create momentum instead. You have a choice. Build your life around feelings, or build your life around standards. People who follow feelings are inconsistent. People who follow standards become reliable. And reliability is one of the most valuable traits in the world. Reliable people get trusted. Reliable people get opportunities. Reliable people get results. Reliable people keep showing up, even when nobody is watching, even when nobody is cheering, even when nobody notices, because they understand something the average person never learns. Discipline is freedom. Discipline frees you from emotional dependence. Discipline frees you from excuses. Discipline frees you from waiting. The person who depends on motivation is controlled by circumstances. The person who depends on discipline controls their response. That difference changes everything. Years from now, your life will not reflect your strongest motivation. Your life will reflect your strongest habits. Your life will reflect your standards. Your life will reflect your discipline. That is why discipline matters. Not because it feels good, because it works. Remember the lesson. Motivation is temporary. Discipline is dependable. Motivation will leave. Discipline remains. Motivation will disappear. Discipline continues. Motivation will abandon you. Discipline will carry you. If you rely on motivation, you will stop. If you rely on discipline, you will continue. And continuing is what separates dreamers from achievers. Because showing up every day has very little to do with how you feel. It has everything to do with what you decide. The disciplined person keeps moving. The disciplined person keeps showing up. The disciplined person keeps going long after excitement disappears. And that consistency creates extraordinary results. But showing up consistently requires understanding another truth. Success is not created during special moments. It is created during ordinary ones. You understand discipline. Now it's time to understand where discipline is actually built. Chapter 3. Win the ordinary days. Most people are in love with big moments. The promotion, the championship, the breakthrough, the standing ovation, the recognition, the result. They dream about those moments. They imagine those moments. They chase those moments. But they misunderstand something important. Those moments are not where success is created. Those moments are where success becomes visible. Success was built long before anyone noticed. That's the key. The trophy is visible. The training is invisible. The reward is visible. The sacrifice is invisible. The victory is visible. The discipline is invisible. And if you want extraordinary results, you must learn to value what most people ignore. The ordinary day. The ordinary day is where extraordinary lives are built. Remember that. The ordinary day is where extraordinary lives are built. Not the exciting day. Not the dramatic day. Not the life-changing day. The ordinary day. The random Tuesday. The quiet Wednesday morning. The boring Thursday afternoon. Those are the moments that determine your future. Because your future is not built occasionally. Your future is built daily. One decision at a time. One habit at a time. One action at a time. Most people lose because they are addicted to excitement. They only act when something feels important. They only work when they feel inspired. They only focus when the pressure becomes urgent. But extraordinary people understand something different. They know the ordinary day counts. They know the boring day matters. They know consistency creates results. And consistency is rarely exciting. Think about professional athletes. When people see an athlete standing on a podium, holding a trophy, they imagine greatness. But greatness was not created on that stage. Greatness was created in empty gyms, early mornings, repetitive drills, countless workouts, hours nobody witnessed, days nobody celebrated, weeks that looked exactly the same. The athlete became great because they mastered ordinary days, not extraordinary ones. That's the key. The ordinary day is where extraordinary lives are built. Think about business. People admire successful companies. They see large revenues, growing teams, powerful brands. But businesses are not built during grand openings. Businesses are built through daily execution. One customer served well. One problem solved. One improvement made. One difficult conversation handled properly. Day after day. Month after month. Year after year. The outside world sees success. The entrepreneur remembers the ordinary days. The days when nothing seemed to happen. The days when progress felt invisible. The days when persistence was the only thing keeping the dream alive. That's what people forget. The extraordinary result is simply the accumulation of ordinary effort. Nothing magical, nothing mysterious, just consistent action. You have a choice. You can chase exciting moments, or you can master ordinary moments. One creates temporary emotion. The other creates lasting success. You have a choice every single day. Because every morning presents the same question. Will you show up today? Not next year. Not after motivation returns. Today. Will you do the work? Will you honor your commitments? Will you follow through? The answer to those questions shapes your future, not your goals, not your intentions, your actions. That's the key. Many people overestimate what they can accomplish in one day and underestimate what they can accomplish in 5 years. Why? Because they are obsessed with immediate results. They want dramatic progress, fast transformation, instant success. But life rarely works that way. The most powerful changes are usually invisible at first. Consider physical fitness. You exercise one day. Nothing changes. You exercise 1 week. Very little changes. You exercise 1 month. Some changes begin to appear, but continue for a year, continue for 3 years, continue for 5 years. Now the transformation becomes undeniable. What created the result? Not one extraordinary workout, thousands of ordinary ones. The ordinary day is where extraordinary lives are built. The same principle applies to learning. Read 10 pages today. It seems insignificant. Read 10 pages every day for years. You become a different person. The same principle applies to saving money. The same principle applies to relationships. The same principle applies to business. The same principle applies to personal growth. Small actions repeated consistently create massive outcomes, not because any single day is remarkable, because consistency compounds. Most people quit because ordinary days feel unrewarding. They don't see immediate evidence. They don't see dramatic progress. They don't see instant results. So they stop. That is a mistake. The disciplined person understands delayed rewards. The disciplined person understands invisible progress. The disciplined person understands that seeds grow underground before they break through the surface. That's the key. Just because you cannot see progress does not mean progress is not happening. A tree grows silently. A foundation is built underground. Character develops internally. And success often follows the same pattern. You have a choice. Trust the process, or abandon it prematurely. One creates growth. The other creates regret. The challenge is simple. Can you respect ordinary days? Can you value repetition? Can you embrace boredom? Because success often looks boring. Wake up. Do the work. Repeat. Wake up. Do the work. Repeat. Wake up. Do the work. Repeat. Nothing dramatic, nothing glamorous, just consistency. The average person gets bored. The disciplined person gets results. It's not about excitement. It's about execution. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency. It's not about occasional greatness. It's about daily discipline. That distinction changes everything. Many people spend years searching for a secret, a shortcut, a hidden advantage, a breakthrough strategy. But the truth is less exciting and far more powerful. The secret is showing up again and again and again, especially when nothing exciting is happening, especially when nobody notices, especially when progress feels slow, because those are the moments that matter most. Those are the moments where character is formed. Those are the moments where habits are strengthened. Those are the moments where futures are built. You don't need their permission. You don't need applause. You don't need recognition. You don't need validation. You only need commitment. Commitment to today's work. Commitment to today's responsibility. Commitment to today's opportunity. The future is not asking you to be extraordinary today. The future is asking you to be consistent today, and then do it again tomorrow. The ordinary day is where extraordinary lives are built. Never forget that. The ordinary workout, the ordinary conversation, the ordinary effort, the ordinary habit, the ordinary choice. These things appear small, but they accumulate. And accumulation changes everything. One day, people will look at your results and call them extraordinary. What they won't see are the thousands of ordinary days that created them. They won't see the discipline. They won't see the consistency. They won't see the quiet commitment. But you will. Because you lived it. Because you earned it. Because you kept showing up. And that is the entire point of this book. Showing up every day. Not occasionally. Not when convenient. Every day. The people who master ordinary days eventually create extraordinary lives. But there is another challenge waiting. Showing up consistently becomes much harder when nobody notices your effort. When recognition disappears. When applause never comes. Can you still continue? Can you still show up? Can you still do the work? That's what separates the truly disciplined from everyone else. And that's where we're going next. Chapter 4. Do it even when nobody cares. One of the greatest tests of discipline is not failure. It is invisibility. It is showing up when nobody notices. Working when nobody applauds. Improving when nobody recognizes your effort. Continuing when nobody seems to care. Most people think success is difficult because the work is hard. But often, the work is not the hardest part. The hardest part is doing the work without recognition. That's the key. Anyone can stay motivated when they are being praised. Anyone can stay committed when they are receiving attention. Anyone can keep going when results are visible. But what happens when none of those things exist? What happens when nobody notices your effort? What happens when nobody supports your vision? What happens when nobody believes in your potential? That is where discipline is tested. Because the truth is simple. The hardest work happens before recognition arrives. Remember that. The hardest work happens before recognition arrives. The world celebrates the result, but it rarely sees the process. People see the successful author. They don't see the years of writing that nobody read. People see the thriving business. They don't see the years of uncertainty that nobody understood. People see the champion athlete. They don't see the thousands of lonely training sessions. People see the victory. They miss the preparation. That's the key. Success is built in private. Recognition happens in public. And if you cannot survive the private stage, you will never reach the public one. You have a choice. You can work only when people are watching, or you can work because the work matters. One creates dependence. The other creates greatness. Think about an author. Imagine sitting alone every morning, writing page after page, month after month, year after year. No audience, no praise, no guarantees, no evidence that anyone will ever care. Yet the author continues. Why? Because disciplined people do not require immediate validation. They understand something most people never learn. Show up before the world notices. That is the rule. That is the process. That is how meaningful work gets done. Most people quit too early because they expect recognition too soon. They want applause after a week, results after a month, success after a few attempts. Life doesn't work that way. The world often rewards people long after they have earned it. That delay causes many people to quit. The disciplined person understands the delay. The disciplined person expects the delay. The disciplined person continues despite the delay. That's the key. Let's talk about entrepreneurs. People admire successful businesses. They admire financial freedom. They admire influence. They admire achievement. But they rarely admire the beginning. The beginning is messy. The beginning is uncertain. The beginning is invisible. An entrepreneur might spend years building something nobody understands. Years solving problems nobody notices. Years improving systems nobody appreciates. Years hearing criticism from people who have never built anything themselves. And still they continue. Why? Because they understand a powerful truth. Recognition is not the goal. Progress is the goal. You don't need their permission. You don't need their approval. You don't need their understanding. You don't need their validation. You need commitment. You need consistency. You need discipline. Those things matter far more than applause. Think about athletes. Most training sessions are boring. Most workouts are repetitive. Most practices happen without spectators, without cameras, without headlines, without celebration. Yet those unseen hours determine everything. The champion is not created during competition. The champion is revealed during competition. The creation happened long before, in silence, in repetition, in discipline. Show up before the world notices. That is how champions are made. That is how leaders are made. That is how successful people are made. The average person wants visible rewards. The disciplined person focuses on invisible progress, and invisible progress is often the most important kind. Every skill begins invisibly. Every habit begins invisibly. Every transformation begins invisibly. The roots grow underground before the tree appears above the surface. Never forget that. Just because nobody sees your progress does not mean progress is not happening. Just because nobody acknowledges your effort does not mean your effort is worthless. Just because nobody applauds does not mean you should stop. You have a choice. You can work for approval, or you can work for growth. One is fragile. The other is powerful. Approval disappears. Growth remains. Approval depends on others. Growth depends on you. That's the key. Many people are addicted to external validation. They post for attention, work for praise, perform for recognition. And when recognition disappears, their effort disappears too. That is dangerous. Because if your discipline depends on applause, your discipline is weak. Real discipline survives in silence. Real discipline survives in obscurity. Real discipline survives when nobody cares. It's not about recognition. It's about commitment. It's not about applause. It's about discipline. It's not about being noticed. It's about becoming better. That distinction changes everything. Imagine if every great creator had quit during the invisible stage. Imagine if every entrepreneur had stopped before customers arrived. Imagine if every athlete had stopped before results appeared. Imagine if every leader had stopped before others believed. The world would be very different. The success stories we admire today were once invisible efforts. The breakthroughs we celebrate today were once ignored. The achievements we respect today were once uncertain dreams. That's why patience matters. That's why persistence matters. That's why discipline matters. Because recognition often arrives much later than effort. Many people stop because they confuse silence with failure. Nobody notices. Nobody responds. Nobody compliments. Nobody cares. So they assume nothing is working. But silence is not failure. Silence is often part of the process. The seed grows silently. Strength develops silently. Character develops silently. Progress often develops silently. You must learn to trust the process. You must learn to continue without immediate rewards. You must learn to find satisfaction in the work itself. Because if you cannot enjoy the process, you will never survive long enough to enjoy the outcome. That's the key. Show up before the world notices. Write before readers arrive. Build before customers arrive. Train before victories arrive. Improve before recognition arrives. Continue before results arrive. That is how extraordinary lives are built, not through constant praise, through constant discipline. The most dangerous moment is not when people doubt you. The most dangerous moment is when you start doubting yourself. Because people doubt you. Never allow outside opinions to determine your consistency. Never allow outside recognition to determine your effort. Never allow outside validation to determine your discipline. You don't need their permission. You need your commitment. And commitment is a decision to continue, a decision to improve, a decision to show up. Again and again and again. Even when nobody cares, especially when nobody cares, because those are the moments that reveal who you really are. Those are the moments that separate the curious from the committed, the interested from the disciplined, the dreamers from the achievers. Remember this lesson. The hardest work happens before recognition arrives. The invisible stage is not punishment. The invisible stage is preparation. Embrace it. Respect it. Use it. Show up before the world notices. Because one day the world may notice. But by then, your discipline will already be stronger than their applause. And once you've learned to work without recognition, another challenge appears. Success requires more than effort. It requires systems. It requires habits. It requires structure. Because motivation fades, recognition comes and goes, but habits remain, and that's where we're headed next. Chapter 5. Make promises your habits can keep. Most people set goals they never reach, not because they are lazy, not because they lack potential, not because they are incapable. They fail for a much simpler reason. Their goals are larger than their systems. Their ambitions are bigger than their habits. Their dreams are stronger than their daily actions. And eventually, reality wins. That's the key. A goal can inspire you, but a habit sustains you. A goal can excite you, but a habit carries you. A goal can point you in the right direction, but a habit determines whether you arrive. Most people spend far too much time thinking about outcomes, the weight they want to lose, the income they want to earn, the business they want to build, the success they want to achieve, the recognition they want to receive. And there is nothing wrong with goals. Goals matter. Goals provide direction. Goals create clarity. But goals alone are not enough, because goals do not produce results. Systems produce results. Habits produce results. Daily actions produce results. Remember this phrase: your habits are stronger than your intentions. Say it again. Your habits are stronger than your intentions, because intentions are emotional. Habits are behavioral. Intentions exist in your mind. Habits exist in your life. Everyone intends to improve. Few people consistently act on those intentions. That is why habits matter. You have a choice. You can focus on what you want, or you can focus on what you repeatedly do. One creates wishes, the other creates outcomes. That's the key. Think about someone who wants to become physically fit. They set a goal: lose 30 pounds, build muscle, improve health. That sounds impressive, but the body does not respond to goals. The body responds to behavior. Did they exercise today? Did they eat properly today? Did they follow through today? The goal itself changes nothing. The habit changes everything. The same principle applies to every area of life. A person wants financial freedom. Excellent. But wealth is not created by wanting wealth. Wealth is created by repeated behaviors: saving, investing, learning, building value, making disciplined decisions over time. The goal inspires. The habit delivers. That's the key. Most people dramatically overestimate the power of big decisions. and underestimate the power of small daily actions. They think life changes in a moment. In reality, life often changes gradually, quietly, repeatedly, a little at a time. Success is rarely explosive. Success is usually accumulated. One day of effort seems insignificant. One habit repeated for years becomes transformational. Your habits are stronger than your intentions. Never forget that. Many people make promises based on emotion. They feel inspired. They feel excited. They feel determined. So they create enormous commitments. They promise to work 4 hours every day, wake up at 5 every morning, exercise 2 hours daily, completely transform their lives overnight. And then reality arrives. Life becomes busy. Energy drops. Motivation fades. The system collapses. Why? Because the promise was unrealistic. The habit was unsustainable. The goal was larger than the system. That's the key. Do not build your future on temporary enthusiasm. Build your future on sustainable habits. The question is not, what can I do on my most motivated day? The question is, what can I consistently do on my worst day? That answer matters far more, because discipline is measured during ordinary days, not extraordinary ones. A simple habit you maintain is infinitely more valuable than an ambitious plan you abandon. You have a choice. You can impress yourself with goals, or you can transform yourself with habits. One feels exciting. The other creates results. Let's make this practical. Suppose you want to become a writer. Most people focus on the outcome. Write a book. Become successful. Gain readers. Earn recognition. Those outcomes are distant. They are uncontrollable. The disciplined person focuses somewhere else. Write 500 words today. Then do it again tomorrow. Then repeat. The habit becomes the priority, not the outcome. The outcome eventually follows. That's the key. Focus on the process. Trust the result. The same applies to fitness. Don't obsess over losing 50 pounds. Focus on today's workout. Focus on today's nutrition. Focus on today's discipline. Control today's actions. The future takes care of itself. Many people fail because they become emotionally attached to outcomes. When outcomes arrive slowly, they become discouraged. When progress is invisible, they lose confidence. When results take time, they quit. The disciplined person understands something different. Outcomes are delayed. Habits are immediate. Every time you follow through, you win. Every time you keep your commitment, you win. Every time you reinforce a habit, you win. The result may take months, but the habit strengthens today, and that matters. You don't need their permission. You don't need instant results. You don't need immediate validation. You need consistency. You need repetition. You need systems. Because systems create reliability. And reliability creates success. It's not about intensity. It's about discipline. It's not about ambition. It's about consistency. It's not about occasional effort. It's about repeated action. That distinction changes everything. Think about your daily routine. What behaviors are shaping your future right now? Not your goals. Not your dreams. Your behaviors. Because your current habits are quietly creating your future. Every day. Whether you notice it or not. If you read every day, you're becoming more knowledgeable. If you train every day, you're becoming stronger. If you practice every day, you're becoming more skilled. If you procrastinate every day, you're strengthening procrastination. Habits work both ways. They build you, or they weaken you. That's why awareness matters. That's why discipline matters. That's why systems matter. You have a choice. Create habits intentionally, or allow habits to develop accidentally. One creates growth. The other creates regret. Most people are waiting for a breakthrough. A breakthrough habit is often what they need, not something dramatic, something repeatable, something sustainable, something realistic. Because small habits create big futures, slowly, quietly, powerfully. The greatest mistake you can make is believing that success requires giant actions. Often, success requires small actions repeated consistently. That is how discipline is built. That is how confidence is built. That is how success is built. Your habits are stronger than your intentions. If your habits support your goals, progress becomes inevitable. If your habits oppose your goals, progress becomes impossible. The choice is yours. Build habits that support your future, or continue relying on motivation and hope. One creates results. The other creates frustration. Remember the lesson. Make promises your habits can keep. Create systems that survive difficult days. Build routines that survive low motivation. Develop behaviors that support long-term success. Because showing up every day becomes much easier when your habits are working for you instead of against you. And once your habits are in place, another obstacle appears. Excuses. The stories people tell themselves. The justifications that sound reasonable. The lies that quietly destroy consistency. That's what we'll confront next. Chapter 6. Stop negotiating with your excuses. Every excuse sounds reasonable. That is what makes excuses dangerous. If excuses sounded ridiculous, nobody would believe them. If excuses sounded foolish, nobody would follow them. But excuses are persuasive. They sound intelligent. They sound logical. They sound justified. And that is exactly why they destroy so many lives. The greatest enemy of your progress is not failure. It is not lack of talent. It is not bad luck. It is the conversation you have with yourself when it is time to act. The negotiation, the compromise, the rationalization, the excuse. That's the key. Most people do not lose because they cannot succeed. They lose because they continuously negotiate with the behaviors that create success. Every excuse has a cost. Remember that. Every excuse has a cost. Not always immediately. Not always visibly. But always. Every excuse costs something. A missed opportunity. A weakened habit. A delayed goal. A smaller future. A lower standard. The cost accumulates, and eventually, the accumulation becomes your life. You have a choice. You can listen to your excuses, or you can challenge them. One creates comfort, the other creates growth. Most excuses fall into 4 categories: lack of time, lack of energy, lack of confidence, fear of failure. Let's start with the most common excuse of all. I don't have time. People say it constantly. They say it with certainty. They say it as if it ends the discussion. But often, it is not entirely true. The issue is not always time. The issue is priority. That's the key. Everyone receives 24 hours. Successful people do not receive extra hours. Disciplined people do not receive special calendars. The difference is how they allocate their attention. The difference is what they prioritize. When something becomes important enough, people find time. Not because time suddenly appears, because priorities change. It's not about lack of time. It's about discipline. That distinction matters, because if you believe time is the problem, you remain powerless. If you recognize discipline is the problem, you can improve it. That realization changes everything. Then comes the next excuse. I don't have the energy. Again, it sounds reasonable, and sometimes it is partially true. People become tired, life becomes demanding, responsibilities become heavy, but discipline was never designed for perfect conditions. Discipline exists for imperfect conditions. Anyone can perform when energy is high. The test comes when energy is low. The disciplined person asks a different question. Not, "Do I feel capable of doing everything today?" Instead, "What can I still do today?" That's the key. Maybe you cannot give 100%. Can you give 50? Can you give 30? Can you take one step? Can you maintain momentum? Because maintaining momentum matters. The average person stops completely. The disciplined person adjusts and continues. One protects feelings. The other protects progress. You have a choice. Now let's talk about confidence. Many people delay action because they do not feel confident. They believe confidence must come first. But you already learned that lesson. Confidence follows action, not the other way around. Yet excuses are clever. They return in different forms. They say, "I'm not ready. I need more preparation. I need more certainty. I need more knowledge." And while those thoughts sound responsible, they often become hiding places. Safe places to avoid risk. Safe places to avoid discomfort. Safe places to avoid action. That's the key. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. The disciplined person acts despite uncertainty. The disciplined person moves despite doubt. The disciplined person starts before confidence arrives, because confidence is earned through repetition, not waiting, not thinking, not wishing, through action. Then there is the final excuse, the one hiding behind countless abandoned dreams, fear of failure. This excuse is powerful because it rarely announces itself directly. People rarely say, "I am afraid." Instead, they say, "I'll start later. I need more time. The timing isn't right. I'll wait until things improve." But beneath those statements often sits fear. Fear of embarrassment, fear of rejection, fear of criticism, fear of making mistakes, fear of looking foolish. That's the key. The fear itself is not the problem. Everyone experiences fear. The problem is obeying fear. The problem is allowing fear to make decisions, because fear always prefers safety. Growth requires discomfort. Fear prefers certainty. Growth requires uncertainty. Fear prefers familiar territory. Growth requires expansion. You have a choice. You can obey fear, or you can act despite fear. One creates stagnation. The other creates transformation. Most people wait for fear to disappear. That is a mistake. Fear rarely disappears before action. It usually weakens because of action. Action creates evidence. Action creates experience. Action creates confidence. And confidence reduces fear. The path forward has always been action, not avoidance, not negotiation. Action. You don't need their permission. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need ideal circumstances. You don't need guarantees. You need a decision to stop negotiating. Because negotiation is often where discipline dies. The alarm rings. The negotiation begins. The workout becomes optional. The commitment becomes flexible. The standard becomes negotiable. And every time you negotiate, the excuse becomes stronger. Every time you obey discipline, discipline becomes stronger. That is how habits are formed. That is how character is formed. That is how identity is formed. You become what you repeatedly obey. If you repeatedly obey excuses, excuses become your lifestyle. If you repeatedly obey discipline, discipline becomes your identity. That's the key. One choice may seem insignificant. One excuse may seem harmless. One delay may seem minor. But life is not shaped by isolated decisions. Life is shaped by repeated decisions. Every excuse has a cost, a hidden cost, a delayed cost, a cumulative cost. The person who skips one workout loses very little. The person who skips hundreds changes their future. The person who delays one opportunity loses very little. The person who delays opportunities for years changes their future. Small decisions become large consequences. That is why discipline matters. Discipline protects your future from your present emotions. Discipline protects your goals from temporary discomfort. Discipline protects your potential from self-sabotage. And self-sabotage often wears the disguise of a reasonable excuse. Never forget that. The excuse sounds logical. The consequence remains real. The excuse sounds comforting. The cost remains painful. The excuse feels harmless. The accumulation becomes devastating. Every excuse has a cost. Remember those words. The next time you hear yourself saying, "I'll do it tomorrow," ask yourself, what is this excuse costing me? The next time you hear yourself saying, "I'm not ready," ask yourself, what is this excuse costing me? The next time you hear yourself saying, "The timing isn't right," ask yourself, what is this excuse costing me? Because awareness is powerful. Awareness interrupts automatic behavior. Awareness exposes self-deception. Awareness creates responsibility. And responsibility creates change. The disciplined person does not eliminate excuses. The disciplined person recognizes them and moves anyway. That is the difference. Excuses never disappear completely, but their power does. Once you stop believing them, once you stop obeying them, once you stop negotiating with them. Showing up every day requires that level of honesty. The honesty to admit when you are making excuses. The courage to act despite them. The discipline to continue regardless. Because every excuse has a cost, and every disciplined action has a reward. The reward may not arrive immediately, but it always arrives eventually. And speaking of eventually, there is another principle you must understand. Success is rarely created by giant actions. It is usually created by small actions repeated consistently over time. Tiny decisions, tiny improvements, tiny disciplines, and when accumulated, they become extraordinary. That's where we're going next. Chapter 7. Small actions. Create massive results. Most people underestimate small actions. That is one of the greatest mistakes they make. They underestimate the value of a single workout, a single page, a single phone call, a single disciplined decision. Because small actions seem insignificant, they appear too small to matter, too small to change a life, too small to create success. But appearances can be deceptive. The truth is simple. Small actions become large destinies. Remember that. Small actions become large destinies, not because any single action is extraordinary, because actions accumulate, because actions compound, because repetition transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. That's the key. Success compounds exactly like money compounds. Think about a small amount of money invested consistently. At first, the growth appears insignificant, slow, almost invisible. But over time, something powerful happens. The gains begin generating gains. Progress begins creating more progress. Growth accelerates. The same principle applies to your habits. The same principle applies to your discipline. The same principle applies to your life. Small actions become large destinies. Most people never experience this principle because they quit too soon. They judge progress too early. They expect dramatic results immediately. When those results fail to appear, they become discouraged. Then they stop. That is where the mistake happens, because the greatest rewards often arrive after long periods of invisible growth. That's the key. Compounding is slow at the beginning, but powerful at the end. The disciplined person understands this. The average person does not. The average person wants immediate rewards. The disciplined person accepts delayed rewards. And that difference changes everything. Let's look at fitness. Imagine two people. One person decides to improve physically, not dramatically, not obsessively, just consistently. 30 minutes of exercise each day, healthier meals, better decisions, nothing extreme, nothing exciting. The second person waits. They promise themselves they will start later, next week, next month, after life becomes easier, after motivation returns. 5 years pass. The difference between those two people becomes enormous, not because one person made a giant decision, because one person repeatedly made small decisions, day after day, month after month, year after year. Small actions become large destinies. That is how transformation works, not suddenly, gradually. Now think about learning. Many people want expertise. They want knowledge. They want mastery. But they underestimate daily learning. Read 10 pages a day. Listen to educational content daily. Practice a skill consistently. At first, nothing dramatic happens. A week passes. Very little changes. A month passes. Still not much. But continue for years. Continue consistently. Continue patiently. Now, the results become undeniable. One person has accumulated thousands of pages of knowledge, thousands of lessons, thousands of insights, all from small daily actions. That's the key. The daily action seems small. The accumulated result becomes extraordinary. The same principle applies to writing. Most people look at a completed book and feel overwhelmed. 300 pages, hundreds of hours, a massive achievement. But books are not written all at once. Books are written one page at a time, one paragraph at a time, one sentence at a time. The disciplined writer understands this. The disciplined writer focuses on today's words, not the entire book. The future takes care of itself. Because small actions become large destinies. You have a choice. Focus on the size of the goal, or focus on the size of today's action. One creates overwhelm. The other creates momentum. The person obsessed with the mountain often becomes discouraged. The person focused on the next step keeps moving. That's the key. Momentum is more important than intensity. A small action completed is more valuable than a perfect action postponed. A tiny improvement made today is more valuable than a grand plan abandoned tomorrow. Never underestimate consistency. Consistency is one of the most powerful forces in the world. Not because it is dramatic, because it is relentless. Think about water. One drop seems harmless, insignificant, powerless. But over years, water reshapes landscapes, carves stone, changes environments, not through intensity, through persistence. Your habits work the same way. Every action leaves a mark. Every decision shapes your identity. Every repetition strengthens a pattern. Positive or negative, productive or destructive, the process never stops. You are always becoming something. The question is, what are your daily actions creating? You have a choice. Build momentum, or build regret, build discipline, or build excuses, build progress, or build stagnation. Small decisions eventually become large consequences. That's the key. Many people wait for a breakthrough. They are looking for one big opportunity, one big moment, one big change, one big victory. But life rarely works that way. Success is usually hidden inside ordinary actions, ordinary habits, ordinary disciplines. Yes, repeated over and over again. The breakthrough often arrives because of thousands of actions that nobody noticed, including the person doing them. That is why patience matters, because compounding requires time. The seed does not become a tree overnight. The athlete does not become elite overnight. The entrepreneur does not become successful overnight. The disciplined person understands this. The disciplined person trusts the process, even when results are invisible, even when progress feels slow, even when growth seems insignificant, because they understand something powerful. Small actions become large destinies. You don't need their permission. You don't need immediate recognition. You don't need instant success. You need consistency. You need patience. You need discipline. The results will follow. Not immediately, but inevitably. If you continue. That is what most people misunderstand. They believe success is about extraordinary effort. In reality, success is often about ordinary effort sustained over an extraordinary period of time. It's not about perfection. It's about discipline. It's not about giant leaps. It's about daily progress. It's not about doing everything. It's about doing something. Again, and again, and again. The future is built exactly this way. One action, one habit, one decision at a time. The person who saves consistently builds wealth. The person who trains consistently builds strength. The person who learns consistently builds wisdom. The person who writes consistently creates books. The person who shows up consistently creates opportunities. None of these outcomes appear suddenly. They emerge through accumulation. And accumulation is available to everyone, not just the talented, not just the fortunate, not just the gifted. Everyone. That is why discipline is so powerful, because discipline allows ordinary people to achieve extraordinary outcomes. One day at a time, one habit at a time, one action at a time. Remember this lesson. The action may be small. The consequence may be enormous. The effort may seem insignificant. The result may become life-changing. Never dismiss today's action because it appears too small. Never underestimate today's discipline because it seems unimportant. Every great achievement was once a small action repeated consistently. Every remarkable life was built through ordinary decisions. Every extraordinary result began as something small. Small actions become large destinies. And when you understand that principle, another important challenge appears. No matter how disciplined you become, there will be days when you fall short. Days when you miss. Days when you break the routine. Days when life gets in the way. The question is not whether that will happen. The question is what you do next. And that's exactly what we'll explore in the next chapter. Chapter 8. Become the person who never misses twice. Let's start with an important truth. You're going to miss days. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fall behind. You're going to lose momentum. You're going to have bad days. That is not weakness. That is being human. The problem is not missing once. The problem is what happens next. Because missing once is an event. Missing repeatedly becomes an identity. That's the key. One missed workout changes very little. One missed day of writing changes very little. One missed opportunity changes very little. But repeated misses create patterns, and patterns create outcomes. Most people do not fail because they make one mistake. They fail because they allow one mistake to become many mistakes. One missed day becomes a missed week. A missed week becomes a missed month. A missed month becomes a lost year. And eventually, they wonder what happened. What happened is simple. The first mistake was not corrected. The first missed day was never recovered. The first small failure became a permanent habit. That is why today's lesson matters. Miss once. Return immediately. Say those words again. Miss once. Return immediately. That principle alone can change your life. Not because it prevents mistakes, because it prevents mistakes from multiplying. You have a choice. Treat a missed day as a temporary interruption, or treat it as permission to quit. One preserves momentum. The other destroys momentum. Most people are trapped by perfectionism. They believe consistency means never failing, never missing, never making mistakes, never falling behind. That belief is unrealistic and dangerous, because the moment they fail, they believe the streak is broken. The moment they miss, they believe they have failed completely. Then they stop. That's the key. Perfection is not required. Recovery is required. It's not about never falling. It's about discipline. It's not about never missing. It's about returning. It's not about perfection. It's about persistence. The disciplined person understands this. The disciplined person does not panic after one bad day. They do not create drama. They do not create excuses. They simply return. Immediately. That response changes everything. Imagine two people pursuing the same goal. Both miss a workout. The first person says, "I ruined my streak. I'll restart next week. I've already failed." One missed workout becomes 7, then 14, then 30. Momentum disappears. The second person says, "I missed today. I'll be back tomorrow." Nothing emotional, nothing dramatic, just immediate recovery. A single missed day remains a single missed day. That is the difference. The difference is not talent. The difference is response. Miss once. Return immediately. That's the key. Think about driving a car. If your car drifts slightly to one side of the road, what do? You correct it. Immediately. You do not drive another 100 miles in the wrong direction. You do not panic. You do not abandon the trip. You simply correct the course. Life works the same way. Habits work the same way. Discipline works the same way. Small corrections prevent major problems. Delayed corrections create disasters. Most people do not need a complete life overhaul. They need a faster recovery process. That's the key. The speed of recovery matters more than the mistake itself. The longer you stay away from a habit, the harder it becomes to return. The longer you delay action, the heavier resistance becomes. The longer you postpone recovery, the more difficult recovery feels. That is why immediate action matters. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Immediately. You don't need their permission. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need a new month. You don't need a new year. You don't need another motivational speech. You need to begin again. Right away. The most successful people in the world understand this principle. Athletes miss training days. Entrepreneurs make mistakes. Writers miss deadlines. Leaders experience setbacks. Nobody is perfect. The difference is that successful people recover quickly. They return before failure becomes a pattern. They return before excuses become habits. They return before momentum disappears. Miss once. Return immediately. Never forget that. Let's talk about identity, because this principle is bigger than productivity. It shapes who you become. Every time you return after a setback, You reinforce a powerful identity. You become someone who follows through. You become someone who keeps promises. You become someone who does not stay down. That identity matters, because identity drives behavior. People act according to who they believe they are. If you believe you're inconsistent, you will behave inconsistently. If you believe you are unreliable, you will behave unreliably. If you believe you are disciplined, you will find ways to return. That's the key. Every recovery strengthens self-respect. Every return strengthens confidence. Every comeback strengthens character. The comeback matters more than the mistake. Most people spend too much time feeling guilty, too much time criticizing themselves, too much time replaying mistakes. That accomplishes nothing. Guilt does not create progress. Action creates progress. Regret does not rebuild momentum. Action rebuilds momentum. Self-judgment does not improve discipline. Action improves discipline. You have a choice. Spend energy analyzing failure, or spend energy recovering from failure. One keeps you stuck. The other moves you forward. The disciplined person chooses recovery every single time, because they understand something powerful. Success is not determined by how often you get knocked down. Success is determined by how often you get back up, again and again and again. There is another danger you must recognize: the all or nothing mindset. This mindset destroys consistency. People believe if they cannot do everything, they should do nothing. If they cannot complete a full workout, they skip it. If they cannot write for an hour, they write nothing. If they cannot perform perfectly, they avoid action entirely. That is a trap, a dangerous trap, because partial progress is still progress. A 10-minute workout is better than none. One page is better than none. One action is better than none. Momentum matters. Perfection does not. That's the key. Protect momentum at all costs, because momentum makes discipline easier. Momentum reduces resistance. Momentum creates confidence. The longer you maintain momentum, the stronger your habits become. Miss once. Return immediately. Protect the habit. Protect the identity. Protect the momentum. That should become your standard. Not perfection. Recovery. Not flawless execution. Consistent return. Not avoiding mistakes. Correcting mistakes quickly. That is how disciplined people think. That is how disciplined people behave. That is how disciplined people win. Because life is not a straight line. Progress is not a straight line. Growth is not a straight line. There will be setbacks. There will be interruptions. There will be difficult days. The question is not whether they happen. The question is how quickly you respond. Remember the lesson. One mistake is rarely the problem. The pattern is the problem. One missed day is not failure. Quitting is failure. One setback is not defeat. Staying down is defeat. Miss once. Return immediately. That habit alone can preserve years of progress. That habit alone can transform your future. That habit alone can help you continue showing up every day. And showing up every day eventually leads to something even deeper. Because lasting discipline is not just about what you do. It is about who you become. Your actions matter, but your identity matters even more. And that's where we're headed next. Chapter 9. Identity drives consistency. Most people focus on what they want. Very few focus on who they need to become. That is why so many goals fail. People chase outcomes, but they ignore identity. They want success, but they do not become successful people. They want discipline, but they do not become disciplined people. They want confidence, but they do not become confident people. And that creates a conflict, because lasting change never begins with outcomes. Lasting change begins with identity. That's the key. Identity drives behavior. Identity drives decisions. Identity drives consistency. You do what the person you believe you are does. Remember that. You do what the person you believe you are does. Not occasionally. Not sometimes. Consistently. Human beings naturally act in alignment with their identity. That is why identity is so powerful. A person who believes they are healthy makes healthier decisions. A person who believes they are disciplined behaves differently. A person who believes they are reliable follows through. Their actions become natural, not because they possess superhuman willpower, because their behavior matches their self-image. That's the key. Most people try to change behavior without changing identity. They say, I want to exercise. I want to save money. I want to become successful. But wanting is not enough. Identity is stronger than desire. Eventually, people return to the person they believe they are. That is why transformation requires something deeper. Not just new actions, a new identity. You have a choice. Continue defining yourself by your past, or start defining yourself by your future. One keeps you trapped. The other creates growth. Think about runners. Runners run. Not because they constantly feel motivated, not because every run feels exciting. They run because running is part of who they are. It is part of their identity. The same is true for writers. Writers write, not because inspiration always appears, not because every writing session feels magical. They write because that is what writers do. It is part of who they are. Leaders lead. Entrepreneurs build. Disciplined people follow through. That's the key. The behavior follows the identity. The action follows the belief. You do what the person you believe you are does. Many people accidentally create weak identities. They constantly repeat negative labels. I'm lazy. I'm inconsistent. I'm not disciplined. I never finish what I start. Those statements seem harmless. They are not. Every repeated label becomes a belief. Every belief influences behavior. Every behavior reinforces identity. A dangerous cycle begins. The person believes they are inconsistent, so they behave inconsistently. The behavior confirms the belief. The belief becomes stronger, and the cycle continues. The opposite is also true. The person begins saying, I follow through. I keep promises. I show up. I am disciplined. Then they take small actions that support those statements. The identity grows stronger. The behavior improves. The cycle works in their favor. That's the key. Identity is built through evidence, not wishes, not affirmations alone. Evidence. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you create evidence. Every time you complete a difficult task, you create evidence. Every time you show up when you do not feel like it, you create evidence. That evidence changes how you see yourself. Slowly, powerfully, permanently. Most people wait until they achieve success before changing their identity. That approach is backwards. The identity must come first. The behavior follows. The results eventually appear. A person does not become disciplined because they succeed. They succeed because they become disciplined. A person does not become reliable because they achieve goals. They achieve goals because they become reliable. That's the key. Identity creates outcomes, not the other way around. You don't need their permission. You do not need others to validate your identity. You do not need applause. You do not need recognition. You do not need approval. You decide who you are becoming. That decision belongs to you. And once you decide, your responsibility becomes simple. Act consistently with that identity. If you decide you're disciplined, show up. If you decide you're reliable, follow through. If you decide you're committed, continue. Again, and again, and again. That repetition creates evidence. The evidence creates belief. The belief creates consistency. Consistency creates results. Everything begins with identity. You have a choice. Build an identity intentionally, or inherit one accidentally. One creates transformation. The other creates limitation. Most people spend years trying to force themselves into better behavior. What they really need is a stronger identity. Because identity removes friction. Identity removes debate. Identity simplifies decisions. Consider someone who identifies as a non-smoker. They do not spend every day resisting cigarettes. Their identity already made the decision. The behavior becomes natural. The same principle applies to discipline. The person who identifies as someone who always follows through spends less energy negotiating. The decision has already been made. That's the key. Identity reduces internal conflict. Identity creates clarity. Identity strengthens consistency. Let's make this practical. Stop asking, "What do I want to achieve?" Start asking, "Who do I need to become?" The first question focuses on outcomes. The second question focuses on identity. And identity creates outcomes. If you want to become fit, become the type of person who trains. If you want to become successful, become the type of person who follows through. If you want to become knowledgeable, become the type of person who learns daily. Focus on becoming. The results will follow. Most people chase goals. Disciplined people build identities. That is the difference. It is not about motivation. It is about discipline. It is not about wishing. It is about becoming. It is not about dreaming. It is about identity. Identity is the foundation beneath every habit, the foundation beneath every action, the foundation beneath every achievement. Without the right identity, consistency feels difficult. With the right identity, consistency becomes natural. That is why this chapter matters. Because discipline is not merely something you do. Discipline is someone you become. And once you become that person, everything changes. Your decisions change. Your standards change. Your habits change. Your future changes. You do what the person you believe you are does. Never forget that. Because the person you become ultimately determines the life you create. The disciplined person keeps showing up. The disciplined person keeps moving forward. The disciplined person keeps honoring commitments. Not because it is always easy, because it is who they are. And that realization brings us to the final lesson of this audiobook. The ultimate reward of discipline. The ultimate power of consistency. The ultimate reason showing up every day matters. Because if you continue long enough, success eventually runs out of places to hide. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. Chapter 10. Show up until success has no choice. There is one final truth you must understand. A truth that separates those who achieve extraordinary results from those who spend their lives wondering what could have been. Most people quit too early, not because they lack talent, not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack opportunity. They quit because they underestimate the power of staying. They underestimate the power of continuing. They underestimate the power of showing up. Again, and again, and again. That's the key. Success is often much closer than people realize. The tragedy is that most people leave before they arrive. They stop after the first setback. They stop after the first disappointment. They stop after the first period of slow progress, and because they stop, they never discover what would have happened if they had continued. That is why persistence matters. Persistence bridges the gap between effort and reward. Persistence carries you through uncertainty. Persistence keeps you moving while everyone else disappears. Keep showing up until success has no choice but to find you. Remember that. Keep showing up until success has no choice but to find you. Those words summarize everything in this audiobook, because every chapter leads here. The discipline to start, the discipline to continue, the discipline to recover, the discipline to stay consistent. All of it points toward one thing: staying in the game. Long enough. Most people dramatically underestimate how long success takes. They imagine rapid progress, fast results, immediate breakthroughs. Life rarely works that way. Most meaningful achievements require time. More time than people expect. More patience than people expect. More persistence than people expect. That is why so many people quit. The timeline disappoints them. Not the opportunity. The timeline. That's the key. The obstacle is rarely the work itself. The obstacle is the willingness to continue when the rewards are delayed. Imagine planting a seed. You water it. You care for it. You nurture it. Days pass. Nothing happens. Weeks pass. Still nothing visible. An impatient person concludes that the process is failing. A disciplined person understands the process is working. Growth is occurring beneath the surface. Success often works exactly the same way. Invisible effort, invisible growth, invisible progress. Then one day, visible results appear, but the visible result is merely the final stage of a much longer process. The real work happened long before. You have a choice. Trust the process, or abandon the process. One creates opportunity. The other creates regret. The world is full of people who were close to success, close to achievement, close to breakthrough. But they stopped. 1 month too early, 1 year too early, 1 effort too early, 1 attempt too early. And because they stopped, they never discovered what persistence could have produced. Never become that person. You have come too far. You have invested too much. You have learned too much. Do not quit because the rewards are taking longer than expected. Keep showing up until success has no choice but to find you. That's the key. Think about every successful person you admire: an entrepreneur, an athlete, a writer, a leader, a creator. From the outside, success appears sudden. But success is almost never sudden. The public sees the breakthrough. The individual remembers the years. The public sees the victory. The individual remembers the repetitions. The public sees the reward. The individual remembers the discipline. Success often arrives after countless invisible repetitions. Never forget that. The repetition matters. The ordinary days matter. The difficult days matter. The days when you felt like quitting matter. Because every repetition strengthens your foundation. Every repetition sharpens your skills. Every repetition increases your odds. The person who keeps showing up becomes difficult to ignore. That is what consistency does. Consistency creates credibility. Consistency creates mastery. Consistency creates momentum. Eventually, consistency becomes impossible to ignore. That's the key. People often ask, what is the secret? The answer disappoints them, because the answer is simple. Stay longer, work longer, persist longer, show up longer. The secret is not glamorous. The secret is endurance. The secret is commitment. The secret is consistency. You don't need their permission. You don't need immediate validation. You don't need constant encouragement. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You need one thing: the willingness to continue. That willingness changes everything. It's not about talent. It's about discipline. It's not about luck. It's about persistence. It's not about being extraordinary. It's about refusing to disappear. That distinction matters, because many talented people quit. Many intelligent people quit. Many gifted people quit. Talent does not guarantee persistence. Intelligence does not guarantee consistency. Discipline does. The disciplined person keeps moving. The disciplined person keeps learning. The disciplined person keeps improving, even when progress feels slow, especially when progress feels slow. You have a choice: become someone who stops when things become difficult, or become someone who continues when things become difficult. One path is crowded. The other path creates success. The majority chooses comfort. The minority chooses commitment. The majority wants immediate rewards. The minority understands delayed rewards. The majority quits. The minority continues. And eventually, the minority wins. Not because they are superior, because they stayed. That's the key. Success rewards persistence. Life rewards consistency. Opportunity rewards reliability. And all three reward people who refuse to quit. Every day you continue, you separate yourself from those who stopped. Every day you continue, you gain experience others never gain. Every day you continue, you strengthen habits others never build. Every day you continue, you move closer. Perhaps not dramatically. Perhaps not visibly, but undeniably. Closer. That is why showing up matters. Not because one day changes everything, because thousands of days change everything. One decision matters, then another, until a lifetime has been built. The future you want is not created in a single breakthrough. It is created through sustained commitment, sustained discipline, sustained effort, sustained consistency. Keep showing up until success has no choice but to find you. Those words are not merely motivation. They are strategy. Because success eventually notices persistence. Success eventually notices discipline. Success eventually notices consistency. The person who keeps showing up eventually becomes impossible to ignore. That is how careers are built. That is how businesses are built. That is how legacies are built. And that is how extraordinary lives are built. One day at a time. One choice at a time. One action at a time. Keep showing up when you feel motivated. Keep showing up when you feel tired. Keep showing up when nobody notices. Keep showing up when results seem invisible. Keep showing up when others quit. Keep showing up when excuses appear. Keep showing up when progress feels slow. Keep showing up again and again and again. Because the people who achieve remarkable things are rarely the people who started best. They are the people who stayed longest. They are the people who continued. They are the people who showed up. And if you do the same, day after day, year after year, there comes a point where success runs out of places to hide. Keep showing up until success has no choice but to find you. Remember what you've learned. Success is not built in a single day. It is built one day at a time. It is built when motivation leaves. It is built when excuses appear. It is built when progress feels invisible. It is built when nobody is watching. Every chapter of this audiobook points to the same truth. Keep showing up. Show up when you feel confident. Show up when you feel uncertain. Show up when you are excited. Show up when you are tired. Show up when results arrive. Show up when results seem impossible to find, because every successful person eventually discovers the same secret. The winners were not always the smartest. They were not always the most talented. They were simply the ones who stayed in the game long enough. So here is your challenge. Tomorrow, show up. The day after that, show up again. And then do it again. Refuse to break the chain. Refuse to surrender your future to temporary feelings. For the next 30 days, commit to one meaningful action every single day toward the life you want. No excuses, no negotiations, no waiting, just show up. Because the life you dream about is waiting on the other side of the discipline you practice today.